Hi everyone, welcome back to Crime Thread, where every case has a thread worth following. I'm Paula Tez, and today we're diving into one of the most disturbing serial killers in American history, the BTK Killer. For more than 30 years, he lived a seemingly normal, ordinary life while hiding a very terrifying secret. He wasn't a stranger passing through town. No, he was a church leader, a family man, your next door neighbor. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's follow the thread. Now, disclaimer here, I am going to talk about sexual assault on women and children and some men, along with some animal abuse. So, if this is a topic that is too hard to handle, I suggest that you skip this video and come back for the next one. So let's begin. So he had a pretty normal life. You know, his mom and dad were both very present in his life, which makes this serial killer really, really scary. Like, nothing in his childhood set him off. There was no significant trauma that triggered him to be this certain person in the way that he was. He was born March 9th, 1945 in Kansas. He was in Boy Scouts, where he learned how to tie knots, and he was in a number of Lutheran church activities. Dennis Rader admits that at an early age, he used to strangle and cats and dogs for fun. By puberty, he had fantasies of tying up girls and having sex with them. His favorite actress was Annette Funicello, a Mouseketeer on the original TV series Mickey Mouse Clubhouse in the 1950s. He graduated from Wichita Heights High School in 1963, and then he joined the U.S. Air Force, where we believe that it's because he was trying to avoid being drafted to the Vietnam War. But while in the Air Force, he did a number of creepy things. Like, he used to peep inside women's windows to see them change, and he would also break in and enter to steal women's underwear, which was really creepy. But less than a year after he returned from the Air Force, he married Paula Diaz in May 22nd of 1971. In 1973, he was working towards a degree to become a police officer at Wichita University. So this man, to say the least, was super busy. And somehow, he still found the time to murder people, which is crazy to me. Like, for example, he would go out and do these things called trolling, which basically meant that he would drive around or walk around different neighborhoods. He would go to the mall, grocery stores, school campuses to look at women and children, or girls, young girls, and obsess over them and have these crazy, nasty fantasies about them. In 1974, there was this new Latino family that moved into his neighborhood. Rader noticed 34-year-old Julie Otero and her 11-year-old daughter. He stalked them for weeks to learn their daily routines, and when this wasn't enough for him, he just decided to go for it. He gathered his hit kit, which included a gun, knives, hoods, cords, tape, plastic bags, and gloves, and also some various tools to help him break in and enter. So on January 15th at 8:20 a.m., he went to the Otero family. He entered the backyard and cut the phone lines. Despite his careful planning, Dennis's plan just didn't go as he wanted. Rader discovered that in addition to the two females in the house, Julie's husband, 38-year-old Joe Otero, and Joey, the couple's 9-year-old son, were also at home. Charlie, Danny, and Carmen, the older Otero siblings, were not home. But nonetheless, Rader pulled out his gun and told the family that he was a criminal on the run and that he needed food, keys, and money to escape the law. So after he promised that he was not going to harm them, he tied them up without protest. But things just turned for the worse when he pulled a bag over little Joey's head and shot her to death. Also tied was Joey and Julie's ankles and wrists, and he shot them to death as well. When Rader then turned his attention to his true target, Josephine. He took her into the basement, where he left her partially dressed only in sweater and socks. she had been gagged and hung by the neck by a sewer pipe in the basement. Now, we don't know for certain if there was sexual assault towards the victims, but there was semen found near and all around the victims and in the house. The only thing missing from the house was Joe's watch. Investigators were stunned at this brutal daytime murder. This was a quiet neighborhood. Crime typically did not happen in this town until that day. Police Chief Floyd Hannon told a Wichita Eagle that the way the family murders were slain, it almost indicated a fetish on the side of the assailant. And oh boy, if only he knew how perverted Dennis Rader's thoughts really were. 9 months after the Otero family murders, the Wichita Eagle's Don Ranger received an anonymous call, presumably by the Otero family killer. The caller led them to a letter in a mechanical engineer's textbook at the Wichita Public Library. The letter claimed credit for the murders and promised the authority that there was going to be more killings. The letter's authenticity was never questioned because it contained details of the murders that the killer and the police only knew. The letter was addressed to the Secret Witness Program, and where people could pass along information on a crime via the newspaper, and they can stay anonymous. The police requested that this letter not be in the newspaper, which the Wichita Eagle agreed. However, Kathy Henkel, a reporter for a two-month-old rival newspaper called the Wichita Sun, also received a copy of the letter and printed part of it on December of 1974. This was some 11 months after the murder. But pretty much in this letter, he stated that there was a factor X, or a demon, that was inside of him, that he could not pick and choose his victims, that the demon or factor X was doing it for him. But he did have a postscript at the end of the letter, and it said, P.S. Since sex criminals do not change their MO, or by nature cannot do so, I will not change mine. The code word for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. So he basically named himself. How pathetic. He's pathetic. In April of 1974, 3 months after the Otero family murders, Rader selected his next victim, Catherine Bright. He stalked her for weeks before he hid at her home at 3217 East 13th Street at approximately 1 p.m. What he did not anticipate was that Kevin Bright, Catherine's brother, would be there with her that day. Rader hid inside their home, and he jumped out at them, basically saying the same lines, that he was a criminal on the run and he needed money to escape the police. So at gunpoint, he got Kevin to tie up Catherine, and then Rader took Kevin to another room to tie him up and gag him. Rader then proceeded to strangle Kevin, and Kevin resisted, as you should, but he was shot twice in the head. He played dead, but he still heard the struggle between him and Catherine in the next room over. He was able to escape to go get help, but it was too late for Catherine. She passed 5 hours after she was taken to the hospital with 3 stab wounds to the abdomen. At this time, the police did not associate this was one of the BTK's victims, which is crazy to me, because, I don't know how the police solved crimes back in the day. It boggles my mind. 3 years later, on March of 1977, Steve Relford was sent to the store by his mom. She was not feeling too well, and she asked him to go get some soup. As Steve was returning home, he was approached by this man who was holding up a picture of a woman and a little child. This man asked Steve if he's seen this woman and this child, and Steve said no. And the man told him, look again. And he said no, he didn't recognize them. Rader then went to the neighbor's house to knock on their door and to try to ask if they knew who these people were. Steve went home, but once he got home, he heard a knock at the door, and he ran to open it. Let's pause there for 2 seconds, because we have to remember Steve was 5. What 5-year-old doesn't run to the door to open it or see who it is, you know? Let's remember that. Rader barged inside, pulls on the blinds, and points a gun at him. His mom comes out of the room, and the phone rings. And Steve asks her if he could pick up the phone. Rader answers, "No. Leave it." Steve looks at his mom, and his mom just says, "Do what the man tells you to do." Rader tells Shirley Van to put toys, blankets, and her 3 children in the bathroom. After that, he took a rope, tied one of the doors shut to the doorknob and the sink. He pushed a bed up against the other door and stripped his mother, taped her hands behind her back, and put a plastic bag over her head, a rope tied around her neck. The children were eventually able to free themselves to call for help. My heart hurts for these kids, for the things that they had to see at such an early age. It makes me really sad. But the town of Wichita was by now in a blind panic. Hundreds of people went out to go buy firearms, and they were coming back home really quickly to see if their phone lines were cut, which was the signature of BTK. Working women hurried home and locked their doors. On December 18th, 1977, BTK called an emergency hotline to go to a specific address to find a victim. Her name was Nancy Fox. Investigators were able to trace the call to a downtown phone booth where witnesses discreetly remember seeing a blonde man approximately 6 feet tall using the phone booth just moments earlier. Unfortunately, the quality of the voice recording was too poor for investigators to perform any type of voice analysis. Paula, speak. But again, how did they solve crimes back in this era? I don't know. A window of the home of Nancy Fox was broken into. Investigators found Nancy dead in her bedroom, a nylon around her neck, and unlike the other victims, she was clothed. Her driver's license was missing from her home, and it was thought that the killer took it as a memento of the crime. An autopsy did conclude that there was no sexual assault on her body. As abruptly as these killings started, they seemed to stop in 1978. In this time, so many people bought firearms, went straight home, and honestly, same. Don't catch me outside if there's a serial killer. Or actually, maybe do catch me outside, because that's exactly what saved 63-year-old Kathy Page Hoopman. In April 18, 1979, Paige Hampman received a note along with one of her scarves. The note said, "Be glad you weren't here, because I was." Imagine coming home to that. Okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The year before, BTK was distraught for lack of publicity, so he wrote a letter on February 10th, 1978, to a local television station. He wrote, "How many do I have to kill before I get my name in the paper or some national attention?" In this letter, he claimed to have murdered 7 victims, naming Nancy Jo Fox as the latest. Number 7 was nameless, adding, "You guessed the motive and the victims." According to the Wichita Eagle newspaper, investigators assumed that the 7th unnamed victim was Kathy Bright. There was a cool down period of about 8 years, and some believe he was just raising a family, or he was just trying to blend in a little more. Or he was actually just planning and failing at a lot of these murders. In 1978, BTK had been stalking Ann Williams, a 63-year-old widow in Wichita. He spent weeks watching her routine, and eventually he broke into her home intending to kill her. But on the day he planned the attack, Ann's schedule changed unexpectedly, which it saved her. She arrived home later than expected, but by the time she got home, BTK had become so impatient and left. And years later, Rader admitted that he simply couldn't wait any longer. He considered this a project that failed. The letter did not become known until 1983. In May of 1985, Rader went to a Cub Scout camping trip to use as an alibi. Rader was in the middle of this Boy Scout meeting when he stated he had a headache, and needed to leave to get medicine. He snuck away when he abducted his neighbor, 54-year-old Maureen Hedge. He cut Maureen's phone lines, waited for her to return home, and manually strangled her and took her body to his church to take sexually explicit photographs of her. Rader then drove her car to the Wichita shopping center to abandon it. Maureen Hedge was found in a ditch 7 miles from her home. He named this crime Project Cookie because he wanted to see if he could kill someone so close to home. In September of 1986, he stalked 28-year-old Vicki Wegler. You're gonna talk, Paula, talk. One day, there was this knock at the door, and this man was claiming to be a telephone lineman, asking to be let in. Now, please remember the time, okay? Because I would have done the same. Again, this was not the age of internet and apps. I couldn't just check my app to see if someone was coming to service my line. It was just someone appeared and okay, cool. So Rader goes inside and he cuts the phone line. He told her he was going to tie her up. At gunpoint, he forced her into the bedroom and tried to tie her up, but she gave him a good fight, causing scratches on Rader. He got rope and stopped her by her to death. After he took photos of her body in different positions, he then left, stealing the Wrangler's car. Soon after, Vicky's husband came home to find their 2-year-old child unharmed, but his wife was tied up in the bedroom. Dennis Rader's last victim was 62-year-old Dolores Davis. He went to a Trooper Scout meeting in January of 1991. He came up with some excuse to get out of the Scout meetings. He drove his car to his parents' house to change out of his Scout outfit or uniform and into his hit clothes. He then drove to the Baptist church in Park City to park his car and finish his plan out on foot. Once he got to Miss Davis's house, he waited outside until he saw that she went to sleep. He broke the glass door at the back of the house with a concrete block that he found laying around. Dolores came out of her bedroom and found Rader. He used the same line as he did almost every single victim, that he was a criminal on the run and he needed money, car, and some food, and that he was going to tie her up. So he did. He tied her up in her bedroom and strangled her to death. Rader took the body outside and put her in the trunk of her own car. He drove to the lake near Park City and hid the body and evidence under some trees. He drove the car back to Miss Davis's house and wiped it down for fingerprints and then left to go back to the church on foot. He went back where he hid the body and put it in the trunk of his own car and dumped the body under a bridge in Sedgwick County. Rader then went somewhere to change back into his Scout uniform and returned back to camp. The following evening, he went back to where he left the body and took photos of her in a mask. From 1991 to 2004, BTK lay in hiding. Again, maybe to raise a family, to be an outstanding church leader, but no one heard from him for over 10 years. But on the 30th anniversary of the Otero family murders, the Wichita Eagle newspaper ran an article on the crime and the BTK. A book also came out by Robert Betty about the nightmare that haunted Wichita, Kansas, aka BTK. This book and article angered Rader because he thought they were just trying to tell his own story. Such a child. He threw a tantrum pretty much. On March 17, 2004, Rader mailed a letter to the Wichita Eagle from an undercover name called Bill Thomas Kilman. The envelope had 3 pictures of the ones he took of Vicki Wegler and her driver's license, then signed it with the same signature that had been used in previous letters. The letter was sent to the FBI and the case reopened. Rader sent another letter on May 5th, 2004 to the Cake TV. It was a weird puzzle that combined a deeper meaning with letters and numbers. Next, on June 9th, 2004, he left a package taped to a sign in the middle of the city which had a gruesome description of the Otero family murders and a sketch of a dead body hanging by a rope. He titled the sketch, "The Sexual Thrill Is My Bill." On June 17, 2004, there was another package labeled BTK that was found at the Wichita Public Library. In this letter, Rader explained that his time was running out and he was waiting for the right time for his next hit. There was also this poem called "Oh Death to Nancy," which was a play on a folklore song called "Oh Death." The fifth letter or item dropped was on October 5th, 2004. It was found by a UPS driver. It was a collage of children with bindings drawn across their bodies and faces. It also contained an autobiography that listed false details about BTK. In January of 2005, BTK sent a postcard to the Cake TV with directions to a post-toasty cereal box he had left on a rural road. The box had BTK written on it, and it was propped up against a road sign. Inside, the investigators found several items, including a doll posed to represent one of the Otero victims. The doll's hands and feet were bound. A bag was placed over the doll's head, mimicking how BTK killed some of his victims. Jewelry taken from the victims, documents and writings related to the BTK crimes, and a material called the BTK Story, which was essentially a manuscript about himself. What happened afterward is even more important. He had resurfaced after years of silence and was enjoying the media coverage. Investigators carefully analyzed every item he sent in, hoping he had made a mistake. Then BTK sent another cereal box related communication asking police whether a floppy disk could be traced back to him. Police publicly answered that it would be safe. This guy was begging to be caught. He believed them. Soon afterward, he mailed a floppy disk that investigators traced back to a church computer associated with a user named Dennis. Because this is considered circumstantial evidence, the police could not go after him just yet. They needed hard, concrete proof. So to confirm that Rader was a suspect, police obtained a warrant to use DNA testing on a pap smear from his daughter. When that DNA test confirmed a familial relationship with a sample found under Miss Wrangler's fingernails, police finally had enough evidence to arrest Rader. Rader was arrested February 25th, 2005, and was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. On the first day of his trial in June of 2005, Rader pleaded guilty to 10 counts of murder, which he callously labeled as projects or PJs. Because his murders were committed at a time when Kansas banned capital punishment, Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. He is currently serving his prison term in solitary confinement at El Dorado Correctional Facility Center in Kansas. Listen, I feel bad for all the victims, for sure. No, without a doubt. I feel very, very bad, but I feel bad also for his family. They believed this man was their husband, was a father, was the person that taught them right from wrong. And from listening to the interviews, I really don't believe that they knew that he was, doing these things on the side. Because I know some people will say, oh, well, I mean, how could you have not known? He has so much time on his hands to go do these things. But they genuinely seem like they didn't know. In the end, this is just one of those stories that makes me really double and triple check that I locked my doors. And also not to be too trusting of people. So, like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.